I grew up in a Baptist church, not too far away from Reverend Cottle's Baptist Church. And I actually appreciated that on Sundays, even growing up in a political family, Sundays weren't about politics. They certainly weren't about extremist political views or encouragement of violence. There's so many problems with what Reverend Cottle did. You referenced that he's now doubled down. I made the comments I made before I knew that he would take such a poor approach in responding to criticism of what he said, right? I mean, he could have said, as you and I discussed on your radio show earlier today, sure would have been nice for him just to admit that he overdid it, that he overspoke, that he didn't mean to let his emotions get the best of him. Instead, you can tell he is maybe using the pulpit to create a new political party. It doesn't look like there's too many people in the church service, and there's a sort of desperation in his voice. It's really discouraging, particularly as a father of 5 kids who wants those children to grow up seeing in pastors and elected officials dignity. At a certain point, we've got to recognize that violence is never the answer. Doesn't matter how mad you get, how disappointed you are in an election. And as MLK said, violence is only going to beget more violence. I think, frankly, that Dr. Cottle came from a very different persuasion than the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.
You know, Mr. Mayor, one of the things that really bothered me, aside from the call to violence here, is that he misrepresented the president's policies and what the White House is trying to do here.
Well, there's no question. I mean, there was a sort of ignorance to it in that there is not a politician, Todd, as you know, anywhere who intends to or would try to steal people's Social Security benefits, right? And for him to prey on congregants, I don't know what he's trying to stir up in our community. It's certainly disappointing. It's frustrating. That is a community. The zip code around his church has significant violent crime. 524 calls of service to the local police department for assault and aggravated assault just in the shadow of his church. We need peacemakers. I heard Director Gabbard say earlier, that the president, in his remarks at the National Prayer Breakfast, which I was there and watched him say that he wants his legacy to be that of a peacemaker. It's ironic in this moment in our country, the president is talking about being a peacemaker, but in a church like this one, you've got such rancid politics that you've actually got a call for violence, and then to your point, a doubling down on this justification for violence.
Mr. Mayor, real quick, I know that you've called for his resignation. I believe he serves on some sort of a regional board there. What's the status of his position?
Well, as you can see by his response, what Reverend Cottle does not have in short supply is arrogance. And so he intends to offend, I think, as many people on his way out as he can, because he has indicated he has no interest in stepping aside. There are provisions in state law for him to be removed. I don't know anybody who is politically in the middle or to the right who is defending or who would attempt to defend both his initial behavior in the pulpit or the lack of grace that he has shown in doubling down. What I think is so discouraging is in local government, we often do get to stay above some of the fray of national politics. I even reminded our local media today, as much as we all suffered through a lack of, really a lack of cognitive ability in the previous administration in Washington. We didn't talk about that a whole lot in local government. We stuck to the job at hand. But here, Reverend Cottle is bringing the very worst and the most evil form of national politics right into local government. And it's certainly not helpful on a planning commission.
All right, Mr. Mayor, we have to leave it there. Certainly.